Well, it is Wednesday morning again, and we're all the way in December of 2025. And this year in crypto has played out a little bit differently than what it might have. Now, a lot of the altcoin run has not happened yet. Now, some saying there's going to be no altcoin run, and that the greater bull run it's already done and it's finished. And they look at how Bitcoin's price has retraced from its highs that it hit not too long ago, and they're saying, see, that's justification that this run is over. There are some of us, me included, that expect the bigger run is still to come. That looking back to previous cycles, the M2 money supply growth is what has really corresponded with the altcoin run, and that hasn't happened yet. And US President Donald Trump really putting pressure on the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates a lot further and go to quantitative easing is what is going to cause the money supply growth boom that will probably lead to massive money coming into risk-on assets such as crypto and altcoins and further pushing up Bitcoin's price. But we're going to see how that plays out. Also look forward to getting Paul's views on things. So strap in, stay tuned, and welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. Now, have you ever worried about money? Well, what if you learned to use some of your money to work for you just right so that later you never had to worry about money again? Now, I grew up poor in life, so it was second-hand clothes, bologna sandwiches every day for lunch. And it isn't bad to grow up that way. In fact, there's some good things that come out of growing up so poor. But I realized the true value of money is that it allows us options in life, and it can decrease that gnawing worry we carry of how do we meet all our financial obligations and perhaps afford some of the nicer things in life, the travel that we want. Now, after a few months of being in crypto, when I started 8 years ago, I recognized that crypto investment done right had the most amazing mass potential to allow us to get to a place where we never have to worry about money again. And after 8 years of being in crypto, I know that crypto can and will change your finances and your life, but there's a huge catch. It only works if you do it right. While being in crypto, I learned something very scary. You see, I know people that have been here longer than I have, but aren't meaningfully rich yet in any way, shape, or form. They are still stuck at and some below where they were when they started in crypto 8 and 9 years ago. I also learned that 95% of people don't make meaningful money or flat out lose money because they're just doing it wrong. And only 5% of crypto investors make life-changing gains that take them into the lifestyle that we all dreamed about as kids. But haven't we learned in life that if you don't do the right things, you get the wrong results? On the flip side of that, if you look at what the successful 5% of people are doing and you do what they're doing, you'll probably start having their results. So I focus 100% of everything I had on figuring out what those 5% did and put it into practice myself. By 2021, using those principles, I was able to fire my day job, move to the city I wanted, and put myself in position to never have to work again if I didn't want to. Now, here in this channel is where I share what I learned. I share my research on the companies I like and why I like them. And today is our price analysis day. This is a day where we combine what I've learned with our special guest, Paul, who's joining us from DevvExchange. And Paul has 30 years price analysis experience looking at price trends and charts. And Wednesdays are a fun time to look at price movements together, what's happening, what might be cheap, what might be really cheap, and what might be expensive, and what might be about to explode. Do note if you're looking at being part of that 5% that make life-changing gains, join our Patreon in the link below that will give you access to our Rainmaker private Discord. Because surrounding yourself with people who have learned and are learning to do the right way is exactly how you get good at this. Do note, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul, who is joining us from DevvExchange, looks at many different markets, including crypto, but many, many other ones. And none of this to be taken as financial advice. So make it rain on that like button. strap in for the show. Help me welcome Paul to the channel. Paul, so good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you guys, and thanks for the comments already coming in. And yeah, sorry that our diaries didn't cross over last week. And but you know, this is the day to be looking at the markets. We've got a Fed rate cut coming, and things are starting to settle down and look a little bit more interesting as we head into the year end. But you know, there's going to be a lot to look forward to in 2026 as well as the year comes to a close. And you know, what a year it's been so far. There's been plenty of volatility and amazing trends in both directions. Some of them not ones that we wanted, but others that have been working out really well.
Yeah, it's funny. So I was looking at one of the guys that I like to follow is Raoul Pal, and he gets paid lots of money and has for a long time to advise very, very successful clients on where to put things. Now, he particularly likes blue chips in the crypto space. He doesn't do the riskier stuff, but generally looks at the trends. What's that?
Sorry, I just jumping in with, I thought he, the last podcast I saw that he did, he said that he had a token Bitcoin, so he only had basically a token amount in Bitcoin, but he'd moved everything into Sui.
Yeah.
So I was looking at that fairly closely. Sorry, I was just adding that.
Yeah, he's moved everything. He was in Solana, and before that he made a bunch of money on ETH, and then he moved it to Solana, and then he moved it all to Sui, which is probably a really good play. Solana has always had question marks by it. Now, I would love to have the founders of Solana on the show. Like, I don't know that they make a lot of appearances, and I would love to hear more what's going on. But yeah, I like Sui a lot, and I'm not surprised he's in Sui. I agree with you, Booth. Like, I don't do blue chips. If I were doing blue chips, Sui would be one of my biggest positions in blue chips. I like it too. Now, my biggest position would be probably in the ISL coins like XRP. But then second to that, or well, like third or fourth on that list would probably be Sui. But I take the riskier stuff, which has potential to go to 100x or 1000x, but might also go to zero as officially one of my investments. So it's cost me not quite 100,000, but a lot. Officially announced that they are dead, and that's Bumper. So too bad. I'm sad to have them fail. Because their use case was something I really, really wanted to come about, and maybe someone else will create that use case. But one of the problems that we have in crypto that a lot of you are going to realize if it goes really good this coming year, and I think it will, is when you're harvesting gains, you'll end up selling, if you're doing it right, you'll end up selling a bunch too soon. And Bumper had an unintended use case that I plan to use it for, which is exploring further upside without having to liquidate your position. So you could just hedge against it. Now, hopefully somebody else will, with better timing or more funding, develop it, because I think what they did was great. It was just perhaps bad timing and too early for their time, and they didn't survive this bear market, which has ended up lasting so far about 5 years. Yeah, rest in peace. Yeah. You know, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, Rain, another failure. And it's like, yes, another failure of an altcoin that had so much potential. But if you really understand what we're doing in crypto, it's early stage business investment in a new technology sector. And there will be failures. And if none of your projects are failures, either you have a magic crystal ball or you're not taking really any risk, which means your upside probably isn't very good either. Booth, they just announced the closure of their business. So they ran, essentially, the way I think about it, so it wasn't a rug pull, it was a business failure. And if you think about it, projects, when they raise capital, that gives them so much runway for their plane to take off the ground. And we had an extended bear market, essentially because interest rates stayed so high which is the secondary thing to really fueling not only interest rates, but quantitative tightening as opposed to quantitative easing. So the money supply was compressed. And so Bumper didn't take off in the runway it had, and it probably did some things to extend that runway, but still wasn't able to successfully take off in the runway it had, and it crashed into the forest and is gone. All right. Well, Paul, share with us some of the markets you're tracking and what you're looking at. So we're getting close to the end of December. We're only going to have one more show. We're going to do a show next Thursday, and that will be our last one for the year. What are you looking at? What are you seeing, Paul, and what has your attention?
So a lot of fear in the market, generally speaking, is what I can see, and that's really good in terms of risk on. It means that risk on means putting your money into assets that should extend higher, which are kind of cyclical towards interest rates going lower and allow for more market liquidity. So when there's more liquidity, it means stock prices rise, house prices rise, gold, silver, etc. And all of that is still on track. Of course, we'll come to the Bitcoin and ETH and etc. Later on. But the first thing I look at is what is the sentiment like at the moment, and is it still negative? And it is. Have we seen the signs that indicate we've got the final move in the stock market? No, not yet. But there are some sectors that have been running pretty hot, like AI, that could be closer to a top. So we shall see. But still, there's no definitive signal as yet that the markets are at their high. All the retracements have done are either consolidated the market or pushed them into new highs. So if we look at the Dow Jones Industrials, it's near its high. And yes, this has been a consolidation on the daily chart. And yes, I've got this line in here for a reason, that if there was a top triggering, it would trigger from this line here. That would be the line that I'd expect to cause the market to go into a quite a big correction. Whether that's the correction is another matter. But as I've said before, the thing with technicals is you might see a potential pattern, but the market still has to justify it. And whilst the trend is up and whilst sentiment is negative, surprisingly, even though interest rates are going to be cut, my bias is for further rises until I see something on the contrary. So it's clearer if we look at some of the other charts. The Dow's 30 stocks, so it's not necessarily indicative of the whole market, but it is indicative of something that's got a decent amount of history, and it's my go-to point for where are we in the risk on cycle. Is there anything here I'm seeing that telling me that things are going wrong? Now, what's interesting about the transport index is that this is doing really well now. It's breaking out, having really underperformed. So if you bought this in 2021, 5 years later, you're sitting on the same price, which isn't great. Dividends, of course, but still the market has gone completely sideways and you've underperformed all the other markets. But that's why people take their eye off the ball and go, yeah, I'm not going to buy this because it's, why would I? And what we can see technically is something building up to an attempt to break the high. Now, it might not, there's still, everything's probabilistic. I can't guarantee anything, but this breakout here, I like the look of, and the fact that it's got this high not far away and the prior all-time high here fairly close tells me that transport stocks should do well. So the Dow and the index, DJI and the transport index both look like they should push higher, which is a great starting point. The NASDAQ, same situation. It's still in an upward trend. We've got this consolidation that I have to be wary of. There could be some sort of top forming here, but again, it's a mistake to say there's definitely a top and this is definitely the time to sell, because it could quite easily push into a new high in the next couple of weeks and into all-time highs. So the market generally is looking for a top. The market's generally looking to short and that's why I'm generally keeping my bias towards the upside. The S&P 500 again is in a consolidation near the high. I still think that's got more to go. So Russell 2000 actually looks pretty attractive here, the way it's just consolidating right near the resistance. And I reference this because, again, this is the smaller cap index, which most people have kind of written off and said they're not going to do very well anyway. Interest rate cuts tend to help smaller companies because they find it harder to raise money. And the fact that this is going to break higher would be very unusual if smaller cap stocks rally and the rest of the market is in a bear market. So what I think is going on is partly gains from AI, which I've always thought would trickle down to smaller companies. And secondly, I think a favorable interest rate environment is good. And also, I think the macro scene is still positive. So all of these things should see this market push higher. So the background of stocks and the forward-looking element of equities is bullish as far as I can see. Now, we've got the Fed today, and the question is, it's not whether they're going to cut today, it's whether they're going to cut again in January and what the path of the market's going to be. And is the dollar going to keep going down? Are rates going to keep, are they going to stay low? Or is the market, as we've discussed many times with Chris and the longer term outlook, when do yields start to rise because the market's seeing the kind of low point for interest rates and they're seeing inflationary factors coming into the market? And that could be soon. It could be as soon as next year. But in order to tell, we should look at the yield, 2-year yields. Well, actually, let's start with the 3-year money is still going down or consolidating. So there's no reversal there. We've been watching it since here, but obviously since this consolidation, looking for further move down. 3 6-month money still on a downward trend. 2 years consolidating, nothing really to see. 10 years starting to tick up a little bit, but nothing to scare the horses, but enough to go, what is this? Is this a significant low? Some of the other markets outside of the US have actually had quite alarming jumps. So if I show you the Australian 3-year money, look at how that has just suddenly exploded. So there could be something going on, and the US it's usually one that leads. It could be one that's lagging now. So I'm seeing some big moves in yields that are suggesting that the market is getting more alarmed about long-term inflation, which isn't really surprising if you look at the price of silver and gold and how they've exploded higher. Again, all these things we kind of flagged along the way that were risk-on trade. So gold is consolidating. This is usually a bullish pattern, so that should go higher. Silver, it was around here last week. Off we go into new highs again. That was something that we were bullish on. Platinum and palladium, it's they're in upward trends. So base metals, they're pushing higher. Copper being one of the most important ones, and zinc and nickel and upward trends too. So you've basically got the situation where most of the commodity markets are moving higher. Are they causing inflation? Will rates have to go up? Is that what we're seeing in the yield? Now, in the short term, that might not affect the market very much because there is an argument for putting your money into cryptocurrencies to protect against inflation in the same way that people are putting money into gold and silver to protect against inflation. So you've got that pull where Bitcoin's had its run, and then people start to worry about when they start to worry about inflation, they look for inflationary hedges. That could be cryptocurrency because you can't just make it. It's got to be, there's a limited supply. So it could be an inflationary hedge, but we will see. I mean, when the market gets worried, they sell anything that's liquid, and that could be stocks and it could be, Bitcoin. But there is very, very early signs that something's going on here. So we have to be aware of that. In terms of where Bitcoin itself is, I'm not going to change my bullish view on it as yet. There were signs of a short-term top and a possible correction on certain triggers around the 90,000 area. There was support line, it broke it, But I think the last time we looked at it, we were looking for a rally, and it is excuse me, it is pushing back up. So there's some signs that this is sort of cheap enough in the short term for people to step in and want to buy it. In terms of sentiment, it's still very negative. I mean, it was sort of in the extreme fear, and it's only ticked up to just basically fear, which would be extremely unusual, but not impossible if this was a top with fear so high. So it seems more likely that we're going to consolidate here for a while and then push higher. And kind of the same thing, I think, for ETH. But actually, what's interesting about ETH is, again, the same thing. We were bullish up there, of course, because we're looking for a breakout, and then we got the correction. And we were looking for a point where ETH would dig its heels in. But I've not been willing to really change the bigger picture view on it, because if you take a step back, it looks like a major consolidation. And when markets do that, usually they break out in a much larger time frame than people expect. So in other words, they can go sideways for like 2 or 3 years and then have a breakout that suddenly moves 2 or 3 years worth of price action in a very short space of time. So that I still think that's a possible scenario, although we've got to keep everything open, and let the market tell us where it wants to go. But what I think is a really interesting setup here is the chart of the ETH versus Bitcoin, ratio spread. And what we have here is what we've been tracking is this, what was an inverse head and shoulders. So down at this low, we were talking about the potential of ETH outperforming, because we got this breakout and this low, and there was a technical pattern here that indicate that this was a low. Then it ran up really fast ahead of everything. It was a correction that ran too far. And as always, things come back and it settles down. And then it's, from a technical point of view, we'd expect this to be making some form of reversal. So you got a left shoulder ahead, and this was potentially the right shoulder. It had to dig in around the area that it's actually dug in at in order to confirm that. And now we've seen the sharp rally up. It could be that ETH continues to outperform. Now, outperforming could also mean it doesn't fall as much as Bitcoin. Bitcoin could fall faster, and it could fall less fast, and it will be outperforming. But I don't think that would be the case. It's more likely that ETH is being bought up in some form of bull market, especially when the broader macro scene is still positive. So I think that's quite encouraging that ETH looks like it's going to perform well, and it is performing well from a short-term perspective. It has rallied enough for it to be out of a danger zone, and from a fairly decent support point. Admittedly, there's a lot more wood to chop higher up, so I'm not saying it's all plain sailing quite yet, but it is encouraging to see a sharp rally, which is usually conducive towards some sort of impulse move that the market can build on. And it's also still printing higher lows from, the low of April this year. So, of course, there is resistance up ahead. There's key resistance up here at 41.37. And of course, the big one up here near the 5,000 point. But it's got to start from somewhere. And as we've seen with a lot of altcoins, things can turn around super fast. And one of the markets that we're going to look at today, when you look at the chart and how it was pretty much bombed out at one point, and then within a few months, it's sort of gone a few thousand%. And that's what we're dealing with here. These markets are extremely volatile.
Agreed. Do you want to take a quick look before we move on to altcoins? Take a look at silver and then the Japanese 10-year.
Oh yeah. What do I think of silver? I'm still bullish. I've not changed my view on silver or gold. It's probably, it's probably due a consolidation of some kind. But this is the thing with technicals. The market is, until it actually gives me a sell signal, that sell signal could come today, and I'd have to sort of change my view. That sell signal could be a spike where the market makes a high and then shuts down. But if it doesn't do that, then I've got no reason to change my view. And I don't think the way it's moving is people aren't on board it yet. I still think that they're missing it. They don't even know it's happening. Like most people will say, "Have you seen silver?" They're like, "No." So it's not hit the general public yet. So I think there's more to go in this trend, probably up to, well, could it get to 75, maybe even more? I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying a specific target. The way I look at it is what the price action's doing. So gold and silver still look like there's more to go. And platinum and palladium are catch-up plays. They're not performing as well, but they're still confirming a synchronized bull market in metals. Now, yields, did you say in Japan, was it?
Yeah, the Japanese 10-year.
Yeah, so the Japanese, let's have a look at, see, the stock market's doing okay in Japan. It's still going high. I mean, okay, this could be some form of top because we've seen a high, the market's come off and corrected, but you know, until it triggers at 48, this is still an upward trend. Yeah, we've got to be a bit cautious. Now, I like to look at the stock market first because when we then look at the bond market, it can tell me whether they're expecting stress. You know, the two kind of go together. Bonds go up, stocks go down. But let's have a look. I know that it was, I think last time it was close to a very important resistance point. Let's have a look. Where is it now? Maybe I haven't got it on here. What's that? Why have I got that there? That's gilts. No. Okay. So I have to see what the code is. I've set it up for crypto. So this is Japanese 10-year yields. And yeah, I mean, look at that, exploding higher. Oh, massive level here at 2%. Psychological as well, which is what you'd expect. I think consolidation around 2 and then possibly higher. I mean, they're trying to cause inflation and they're doing a good job of it, I guess. I think the problem is they might be doing too good a job of it and they might need to rein things in. And that's partly why the stock market's going up. That I wouldn't bet against that trend. It does look like that's got more to come. This thing with the Japanese government is they've got a huge amount of debt, and the debt servicing costs with these moves are going to be increasingly punitive towards them because they're leveraged. So every 10 basis points that the market moves up, it's just going to be costing them more and more money. So this could get out of hand, and it could be something that we need to really keep a close eye on, which is possibly why you're asking. But there may be a pause at 2%. That's a good psychological level. It may be that they step in at that level to try and slow things down. But it's not necessarily a trend I would fight against, and especially when we're seeing other yields moving up quite aggressively. And there could be people who have caught out by expecting it to be negative as it was back here, or always low because yields have been so low for so long in Japan, and they just can't believe that things have turned up. And that's another thing you get complacency because the market's done something for a long time and it's now doing something unusual, and they're very slow to change towards the new normal. So I think that will exacerbate the problem and probably push the market up, yields up, market down much further. But yeah, it's a really good thing to identify, and that definitely looks like it's got more to go, which actually leads us into something I should have mentioned, which is the currency markets and what the dollar's doing. It's not really done a whole lot this week, but there are signs that things are starting to turn around in terms of dollar weakness and strength in the other currencies. So it's playing around this 99 level, 99, 100, but some of the other currencies against the dollar have strengthened, especially the commodity currencies. So if we look at the dollar Canada, that's come off really aggressively. The Aussie, the Australian, that's gone up. And against the Swiss franc, that's still looking ready to go lower. So against some of the majors, even the UK, sterling, sorry, that's a bit It's got a lot of lines on it. I should delete some to make it clearer. But even against sterling, which was, you know, considered to be a bit of a basket case and potentially where we were going to have a bad budget and the markets were going to crash, it's performed well against the dollar. So the dollar's looking pretty soft here. And against the Japanese yen, from what I remember, just about everything is going up against the Japanese yen. So the currency's falling fast. And when the currency falls fast, people sell assets of that country. It can work to help the stock market because your assets become cheaper. So if you're buying Japanese property, say, and you've got dollars and the yen's cheaper, then effectively the prices of that are going down. So capital goes in. But if the yen is falling too fast, then you don't want to invest because whatever you invest in becomes worth less at a greater rate. So at a certain speed, it's okay. If it gets too fast, it can become very negative. So there's a balance there, and we see the balance in the stock market. But the yen is generally weak and is weakening, even against a weaker US dollar. So again, whether that's Japanese policy, Japanese government policy, because they're trying to invoke some inflation in the system, or whether it's fear is not really clear at this point. But for the moment, I'd say it's positive for the markets. It's positive for the Japanese stock market, but we don't want to see this go too fast. So if we take the Aussie dollar, which is a higher yielding currency against a lower yielding currency, you can see how it's accelerated. I mean, these are massive moves from 86 to 103 in currencies. They're really exaggerated. Now, the last collapse that we had, when we had a really big sell-off in October, July, October 24, when the market really got shaken up, it was driven by this move. So we had Aussie yen moving almost parabolic. It hit 108, and then bam, we had this big correction. And so it's not recovered those previous highs, but it's still recovering. So the yen is under pressure, that's for sure. And I think that's something you're very right to point that out. We should keep an eye on that.
Well, I wanted to step back and go to the bigger question that's on everyone's mind, which is this whole idea of a 4-year cycle. And I wanted to share some insights. Some of this just I got from Raoul Pal, and actually an amalgamation of other sources. And I found a chart that really explains what the hell is going on, because historically, and probably you're aware of this, Paul, Bitcoin every 4 years since 2013 has had a crazy cycle, which is primarily went Bitcoin first, rolling mostly into altcoins. So 2013, 2017, 2021, all 4 years. And yet here we are, end of 2025, and no cycle. And that means people are saying, well, the 4-year cycle is dead. Well, yes and no. Cycles aren't dead, but it didn't happen in 4 years. And I found a chart that when you take it with, why does Bitcoin go up every 4 years? Well, because the Bitcoin halving creates a supply crunch. So with demand continuing to increase and yet supply going down, or the supply increase going down every 4 years, Bitcoin tends to pump. And historically, that has led to Bitcoin rising every 4 years, which actually this year Bitcoin has risen a whole bunch, but it's never really moved into altcoins. And why? I want to share with everyone this Bitcoin money. Oops, that was not. Let's go to this screen here. Same screen, just different placement on us so that you can see the screen better. But this is Bitcoin and M2 growth global. So this green line is your M2 or money supply growth year over year. And look at where this has peaked. Well, each time it's peaked, generally around when altcoins peaked. So in the early part of it, Bitcoin then peaked, but so it does somewhat coincide with the Bitcoin peak, but it more coincides with your altcoin peak. So this was March 20, No. Okay, so it comes up like this in 2017. There we go. Peaks right here. And when did altcoins peak? Well, January and February of 2018. So a little bit in December 2017, but then altcoins peaked right here. So then it goes back down, with also coinciding with the bear market. And then money supply growth here peaks again in March of 2021. Well, when did most altcoins peak in 2021? Oh yeah, March of 2021. Now look how low the money supply growth has been. And yet we haven't had an altcoin rally yet. But doesn't this track? Money supply growth has not hit these higher amounts yet. We've had some things going, but generally a lot of the money hasn't flowed into altcoins yet. So some people are taking that to mean that it's not going to at all. But if we see this huge increase in M2 growth, we'll also probably see a lot of that flow into altcoins, just like we did before. And I think with interest rates continuing to come down into next year, that's going to further push this green area, or the M2 global supply, or excuse me, the M2 growth up tremendously, and we get the altcoin rally that we've been waiting for. Let's jump into any thoughts on that before we jump into some of these altcoins.
No, not really. Just that I think the direction for the Fed has been away from QT towards not QE, but getting rid of QTs is an important step. And I think politically, although I only look at charts, or not, I only look at charts. I look at other things, but the charts direct the view that I have. You can also work out on the basis of psychology that if Trump's son is very much into crypto and crypto starts to go down, he's going to have Trump's ear about how to maybe make conditions more favorable for the sector that he sees as the future, rightly or wrongly. That's a positive in the sense that it will push the market up. It's a negative in the sense that it could push the market up too far, too fast, and cause distortions that then cause problems further down the line. But having a market that's rising quickly, I guess, is a nice problem to have if that's what we're going to see. So some of the money supply issues, whether they print or whether they are tightening, I think we're already seeing politically change in the short term. And as you alluded to, the Fed chairman changing, it points to more of a change in sentiment that would be kind of perfect for the kind of final phase of a massive bull market that we've been discussing for some time. And it would be interesting to look back at this point and say, it didn't feel like a low again, but it happened to be a really important low before all this really positive stuff comes in. And then you get the country sentiment trade that we're looking for that normally indicates that we've seen the top. So if there's a headline there, it's just that the sentiment again just doesn't feel right for a top, because we haven't seen that, as you say, we haven't seen the 4-year cycle rally that's drawn in people who wouldn't normally be in the market, which is what it kind of does. Is it different this time? I mean, it's possible, but it isn't usually. So there are some interesting other things that would point to the fact that this is still to come. And it has been lacking, but as we've said, there's certain things that have turned around extremely quickly from looking terrible. So that's more indicative of a speculative market than the other way around.
Yeah, I really want the audience to to think more multi-directional instead of multi-dimensional rather than one-dimensional. It's like, okay, 4-year cycle. Well, it's been 4 years, it hasn't happened, so there's never going to be a 4-year cycle again. It's like, well, we don't know if it's going to be a 4-year cycle, a 5-year cycle in the future, a 7-year cycle, or a 3-year cycle. But because the Bitcoin halving is part of that impetus, and that is going to happen every 4 years, I'm leaning closer to usually every 4 or 5 years. Now, what is going to happen with the federal policy in the upcoming presidential election in 2020? What would that be? 2028? I have no idea at this point. And where is the crypto market going to be at that point? Probably in a bear market, but we'll see how it plays out. My guess is this next year, it swings too far to the upside, which almost guarantees a crash because, you know, especially with the volatility of crypto, that I like that volatility. Volatility is amazing for my type of investing. But what I've seen with crypto is that it corrects too far each way. And that's one of the things I like about it. So 2021, a lot of things swung too far to the upside. And so in the bear market, things have swung too far to the downside, which I like, because the way you make money in any type of investing is buy low, sell high. So will it swing too far to the upside this time? Probably. I mean, if interest rates come down massively in the US combined with quantitative easing, I don't see why altcoins don't absolutely blow up and swing too far to the upside, which is a great time to be selling, terrible time to be buying, and then waiting, because if they swing too far to the upside, they'll probably swing too far to the downside again. Let's take a look at some of these altcoins. ETH, XRP. We did look at ETH. XRP, Cardano, Zcash, Jupiter, OMI, and then we have time for a few suggestions. So we'll put in, what was it? Booth asked us to add Sui in there.
Okay. Yeah. So XRP is, I mean, we can do this quite quickly, really, because XRP's kind of a wait here. It's still a wait. It's in this volatile consolidation, and it's done enough to break down, because this move was jumped upon as a buying opportunity, so it was rejected very quickly as prices went down. Buyers stepped in, so we've seen a very important low point, but it's not as yet trending up either. So the way I look at it in terms of time, if you were to have bought it in December a year ago, where would you be? Well, it obviously depends just about where you bought it, but probably flat. And the market is so balanced. It's just balanced here. So my view in the short term is neutral. In the longer term, I do think that when you look at the whole structure of this, it would be more likely and have a greater probability that things will go higher from here, and head towards these areas, to break out, you know, for an upward trend. But that being the high probability is one thing, and it actually doing it is another. So we need to wait for that to happen. But from the breakout points, from this consolidation where everyone said it was over, and it's still higher. And that's why I think with the macro scenario still positive, in a 50-50 market, I'm still holding on to the bull case, because that still has the bias. The price action itself is not great. It's not what I'd like to see here, because it is too volatile in a range. And that's normally, you know, in different circumstances, that could be seen as a top, but it's unusual to get this sort of run up and a top and then a straight down. So this feels more like it's gone almost beyond that, and it's now just this big consolidation area, which will be the next point of which it, you know, extends higher from. But we need to see some evidence. We've seen ETH look as bad as this and then start to recover, and we'll see if ETH builds on it, and maybe the market will then start looking for other opportunities where it, you know, these bigger projects haven't moved, and start jumping on them. But just looking at where the banks are and how this is connected, banking stocks still doing pretty well. So if this is to correlate with that in any way, this should still have some more upside. But whether it's from right now is another matter. Right now, today, it looks neutral. So I want to see some form of sharp move that indicates an impulsive move has started, similar to what we've seen in ETH. So for the moment, for me, it's a wait.
All right. Well, if you want the very best information on what is going on with XRP, if you haven't joined the private Discord, and you have to join the Patreon to get access to the private Discord, so much information is shared there, primarily by Sale, who has been keeping us all up to date on what is going on with XRP. Now, looking at the price here, it's way up. Well, it came way up to its 2017 highs, or this was actually early 2018 highs. Now, what most people don't realize is right here, the market cap of XRP actually surpassed Bitcoin's market cap. So there already was a flippening, but it wasn't ETH that flipped Bitcoin, it was XRP. Now, the SEC absolutely went after XRP, trying to destroy it, and they were unsuccessful, but its pump was muted in the 2021 run a lot because of that SEC lawsuit. However, when Donald Trump came into office and a change in the SEC, absolutely things pumped. So this was when he won the election. It was clear that Donald Trump was going to become the new U.S. president. XRP went up, but is XRP a good deal here, or is it already expensive? Well, my best guess is XRP is an amazing deal here. Now, thankfully, it's come down from its $3.30 down to $2. And you're looking at this market cap and you're like, that's so high already. And it is so high already. But we've never seen, at least that I can think of, something like what is about to happen with XRP. And that XRP is going to make up the financial rails of the new monetary system. That instead of like so much will be transacted on XRP with the banking systems of all these major countries. I believe XRP's market cap is going to go crazy even from here. But if you've been in our Discord during the bear market, which has been an amazing place to be, Dale was sharing with everyone the details on what was going on with XRP way back when it was 35 cents. So yeah, it's not as cheap as it was there. There's still a lot that most are completely unaware of. There's happening with XRP. Its fundamental value behind it is so strong. I think it's got massive upside from here, especially at this nice juicy pullback to $2. XRP is an amazing buy, and I don't normally like blue chips, and I almost never like something with a market cap so high, because I look at things and I say, can it do 100x from here? And it's like, truth is, I don't know. XRP, even though its market cap is so high, it's almost unfathomable to think that it could do 100x from here. But we've never seen what's about to happen with it. And I don't know if they'll do 100x from here, probably 100x from where it was at the 35 cents. But from here, I still think it's got massive upside potential. So for me, it's a buy. All right, let's take a look at Cardano.
Yeah, Cardano is always one that is favored, isn't it? People, if you ask around, I mean, this is stuff I get from speaking to you and other people who definitely know more about it than I do. It's always very complimentary about the project, and it looks like there's been an update that this is talking about here that's relating to the project and raising some money. But in terms of the technicals, it's been in a consolidation again. It's like everything, it's come off its highs, and it wouldn't surprise me if people are just generally disinterested in what's happening, because it would look like there's more action in some of the other projects. But this has been in a very nice, consistent upward trend, and it's actually come back and just recently tested that. So even though there's not a lot going on, I think a short term and a small buy from me at these levels with a stop below is not a bad risk reward trade, only because it has had a correction. It is a well-liked project. If we are going to see some form of rally in altcoins, then I don't see why this one won't be part of it. And if I'm wrong, I'll be wrong fairly quickly. So for a small amount of capital, I quite like the look of this chart. It could look better, of course. It could be, trending aggressively higher, like things like silver or whatever. But it's got to start from somewhere. And so for me, I think it's got more work to do, definitely. I mean, there's big resistance here at 52 cents. That is massive. So that's a major barrier that could just stop anything that I'm looking at right now. But it has corrected, and it's putting in some green bars here around or close to this upward trend line. And I think it feels like maybe that's enough. Maybe that correction is over, and this news as well is now in the price. If it's seen as slightly negative for the price in the short term, or it was kind of being factored in here, now it's been announced that it could be over. So we shall see. But for me, I think it's not a bad buy point. So I would put a small amount in here with a tight stop.
Yeah. Its trend is looking interesting. I mean, so generally when you look at the bigger thing, it's like, oh my gosh, it's just mostly down like this. But if you look recently in the last month, look at this nice rounded bottom. Like you were saying, like it might be ready to start heading the other way. On the bigger scale, look at this. It might just be a short-term pump, but it's turned around from this. And if you're going to be wrong, you'll be wrong pretty quick. But on a short-term trade, looks like it's going to see more upside soon. Longer term, like I like Cardano. Cardano did really good for me. I was buying it in the bear market of 2018, 2019, 2020, and I started buying at 11 cents and then 9 cents and then 7 cents and 5 cents. And I loaded up and doubled my position at 3 cents and even bottom cheaper than that, which I was really bummed I didn't get a bunch at the bottom. And I had some plans to get some at the bottom, but tried my hand at leveraging Bitcoin and got my position wiped, and the money I'd set aside to buy Cardano, if it went below 2 cents, I'd be used to buy back my Bitcoin. So Cardano, at the time, everyone said that this was back here. People said Cardano was dead and it was never going to survive and it was a waste of time and Charles Hoskinson was an idiot. And yet they were all wrong. And Cardano went to, though it doesn't show it here, went to 330 for a brief time before then correcting downward, and we've gotten this long bear market. Well, it's not as cheap as it once was, but it's pretty dang cheap. And at 46 cents, it's a decent buy for those that like blue chips. That's just my opinion. I like Cardano. I think it'll survive at least for the next number of years, and at least until the coming bull run. If it doesn't survive in perpetuity, which at this point it might. So for a blue chip, it's one of my preferred blue chips. I'd give it a buy at this price. But I hold for the longer term. So I'd be buying just a dollar cost average in and be waiting until it absolutely goes crazy. If it does go crazy, I think it will. All right, let's take a look now at Zcash, which is one that totally took off out of nowhere. All of a sudden, everything within the privacy narrative took off, and let's see what its price action is doing.
So the big breakout here is this $80 level, and we obviously were looking at this at some point because these lines have been from before, and you can see how it kind of turned from 24th of July around this area here. That was the turning point. I'm not saying that point was predictable at that day, But from there, the dynamics had changed from a downward trend to an upward trend. It did attempt to break out. We had this $80 resistance that it failed at, corrected, and then came up for another move, which is a classic technical breakout signal. Now, what's happened from there is the market has gone up in such a straight line that it's got up pretty much too fast. So it needs to correct from that, because it's impossible for this to be, not impossible. I say the word impossible. It's unlikely for it to be sustained, but that doesn't mean that people see that and hear that and they look at the price action when it's trading at, say, around 8, let's say, so it's trading around 80 and they're looking at it here around 178 and they go, oh, it's gone up too fast, it's never going to go up that fast, I'm going to short it. And of course it goes up even more and they go, oh no, it can't keep going up, so I'm going to short it. And yeah, they might be right once, but they'll be wrong all the way up. And these are absolutely massive moves. So we don't, from a technical point of view, stand in front of a market like that. Even at the high, we're still looking for the market to go higher because that's been the general trend. Now, since then, we did have a double top signal, which is usually the sign that the market wants to reverse. And that's worked pretty well. So we got a double top that's triggered at 433, which is exactly where it is now. So it's actually sitting on a really important level. Now, the psychology of this is it did need to go sideways anyway. Is this enough to turn into a bear market, or are we seeing just some form of correction? I think it's more likely to be just a correction at this stage because it has gone up so fast. Also, this topping pattern is relatively small and it's corrected pretty much in line with the size of that pattern. So the next level that we've got where it's bounced from, which is a really good technical point, is at 301, which was the prior high and resistance breakout from here. So I would say, from a psychological point of view, if anyone had bought it around this area here, would they be looking to jump out? Would they want to exit their positions? Has it done enough to do that? And I'd say the answer to that is no. So that means the bias would be still towards the upside. But where I think, if it were me psychologically, I would be looking to bail out, certainly from a short-term point of view, would be if it does break this 301, because that is such an important support point. So what I'd like to see happen is that it just goes sideways and consolidates for a few weeks, and stays within this zone. Then it will feel far more comfortable for it to take in a breath, had a breather, and then the people who were getting overexcited about it in the short term may have exited their positions, and then it gets ready for another run. So as far as with anything that's as volatile as this, it's very difficult to predict week to week, especially when we're going into a period of lower market liquidity over Christmas and New Year. But is the bias bullish or bearish? For me, it'd be bullish at this point with a stop at 301, and unless that breaks, then it's performing very well, and I would want to go with the winners.
Yeah. So for you, it's a buy, going with the trend. We lost your audio there right at the end.
Oh, really?
Oh, there we go. Yeah. All right. Let's look at Zcash, and you notice like Zcash really did poorly in the 2021 bull run, and that's because the privacy narrative did pretty poorly in the 2021 run. Gary Gensler's SEC absolutely went after privacy coins, including trying to jail the people who programmed the code used by Tornado Cash, which is a move like, code had been deemed by U.S. courts as free speech. And so trying to jail people for writing code that was then later used by other people, instead of jailing the people that were using the code to do illegal things, they tried jailing the programmer who'd program code that could be then used for bad things. That was a different type of way of trying to prosecute people. than I'm aware had ever been done before. So that put a huge kibosh on the privacy narrative in 2021. Well, Gary Gensler's SEC is very different from the current SEC. And so Zcash, I don't know what news came out, but it absolutely pumped. And probably this is not the bull market high. Now, one of my principles is I don't chase green candles. So it's like it's way up from its lows. And I have to look at this and be like, well, I missed it. It's 11x up from where its lows were. Shoot, I just can't chase that green candle. But most of my stuff isn't short-term trading anyway. So I don't buy in and then sell like a couple days or a couple weeks later when it's partially up. I try to take the bigger moves of buying when it's low and dollar cost averaging in when it's low and then waiting till it's a lot higher. Now, had I bought in here, would I be taking some profits? Yes, I would have been taking some profits. I announced like I'd be taking profits while it was going up here. And so it's not a buy. If I had a bunch from during the bear market, would I further be taking profits? Probably a little bit. Is there probably more run ahead? Probably. But a lot of other things are even cheaper now. So I'd be rolling in something that's gone up 10x into things that are even cheaper than they were before. Gives me an even stronger position. So do I think Zcash will do better than this in the general bull run? Yes. So I'm not selling it because I don't think it'll go higher. I'd be selling it because other things are even cheaper. And it just moves my overall position ahead. All right, let's take a look at Jupiter. Now, I suggested Jupiter to look at, and back when meme coins were totally running, I remember watching some really big YouTube channels, crypto YouTube channels, talking about how they were buying more Jupiter and that they were just buying more. And, well, let's look at Jupiter's price.
Yeah, I can't really justify being bullish here for a couple of reasons. It's broken below a major low point from April 25. So, it came close to test it as support. So one, and then again here, I don't know if this is a real low here. I'm not sure if that's a real price bar. It could be. You never really know, but it looks like it's a misprint of a bar. And then if we ignore that for the moment, you can see how it broke this prior support. So there was obviously buying trying to hold it there, and it just would not hold, selling through it, selling through the prior low, and we're still in a downward trend. I mean, we can update the trend line from here, but it's definitely not done enough to indicate that this is a buy. It's not given any technical signs. So for me, at the very least, it's a wait and it's possibly a sell because the trend is still going down. It would have to recover back over 30 cents minimum or make some form of reversal pattern here before I think I would be justified in calling it a buy. But in any case, I think for the moment, there'd be other opportunities elsewhere. So, yeah, so for me, it's either a sell or a wait.
Yeah. I'd be concerned at buying at this point, but I just want to reflect because a lot of this channel, like my hope is that each of you are learning to think for yourselves and you're learning to think differently than most of the people out there. So learning to think contrary to what the general trend is. Now, as human beings, there's this hardwiring in us that's like, there's safety in the masses, and it's kind of like birds that kind of fly together. When you see those huge swarms of birds flying together, that does provide them a mechanism of safety by flying together. As human beings, it's like it's safe to be where everyone is. But do you realize in investing and learning to make money for you, you're not safe necessarily when you're where everyone is. So if you're buying when everyone is buying, that's probably not going to work out good for you. And if you're selling when everyone's selling, it's probably not going to work out for you. What you're looking for is to be buying when most people are selling on select items that you've researched to discover what's great and what's not. Now, when did Jupiter do really well? Well, shortly after launch, it was a new DEX, decentralized exchange, on Solana. And Solana was going crazy because of meme coins, and newly launched AI coins were going crazy. And so, literally, these major channels with like 1 million subscribers were covering Jupiter and how they were buying more Jupiter. When? Well, when the price was $1.50 and the price was $1.70, they were talking about how they were dollar cost averaging in. Now, it's not uncommon for people to get things wrong, but the huge warning sign to me was everyone is in the crypto space at the time was doing it and talking about it. That is usually a bad time to be buying and a great time to be selling. And Jupiter illustrates that really well. Because what has happened since then? Well, this. Now, some of that is somewhat predictable. Like Solana was strongly in the narrative during a bear market. AI was in the narrative, meme coins were in the narrative. And so, of course, Jupiter, which was the DEX that most people were then using to trade those, or a lot of people were, was also in the narrative, but narratives don't last for forever. Secondly, look at this. $1.70, it's down to 22 cents. Look at this token investing schedule. See this very compressed token investing? Watch out for this. In fact, if you're buying now, watch out for this major release that's about to happen of a ton more tokens. And, a lot of the token supply, it still continues to unlock through 2027. And then, well, mostly through 2026. Then it flatlines. But even through 2026, you're going to see a lot more vesting. But there's this huge release of tokens is about to happen here. So I expect Jupiter is going to go even cheaper. So short term, it's a sell because you can probably buy back cheaper later because this huge token investing thing. Now, I've never fully understood why Solana is pronounced by so many as like the big thing. Their technology hasn't held up as well under massive loads. Yeah, its trading was cheaper on it than ETH, especially in ETH's heyday. ETH's trading got very, very expensive, and Solana was a much better alternative to that. And for a while, their wallet was so much easier to use, the wallets associated with it. But I don't see why Solana is going to outperform Sui. Sui is better than Solana, in my opinion, in a whole bunch of ways, without the risk. Now, I know like there's big names like, what is that guy's name that worked for Donald Trump in his 2016 administration for like a week? Anthony Scaramucci, who's like, yeah, Solana is the big thing. There's a lot of VCs that push Solana, but I don't understand why its technology stands up against Sui. So maybe I'm wrong on that. But I would be concerned now. Will Jupiter probably go down from here? I think it will. And then probably Solana will probably come back into the narrative. I don't know whether Solana makes it 20 years from now, but probably it will survive just fine into this coming bull market and do well again. But as Solana does well, I imagine Jupiter will do well again. But watch out for this. I want to show you this. I also want to share with you, be careful when everyone in crypto is talking about something and buying it. That's usually not the time to be buying. It's a great time to be selling, and Jupiter illustrates that classically. All right. So it is a sell for me. All right, let's take a look at OMI and see what's going on with its price action. We've been tracking it really closely as it's been trying so hard to turn around and yet still hasn't.
Yeah. So the last time we looked at it, it had broken out and it was compressing here, which for another leg, that was a perfect thing for it to do. But it had this overhead resistance that it just could not overcome. And I think short-term traders must have just bailed out as soon as there was sign of weakness here. This was the main trend line that it was building on, and that is now broken. So not the best sign. Momentum's definitely come off. So my view around there was it was a small buy, and for me, I have to tread very carefully with this because the trend is still negative. See, and until we get a sign that all these highs have broken in terms of the pattern of lower highs, I've got to be careful by justifying any buys. But that doesn't mean that the market is always going down. As we've seen, there are sometimes when short-term patterns are pointing to the upside, and we could take a short-term trade and see if it builds on that. And that was what that was about. It's just really small, just like a marking trade, as I would say. So if it's small enough to not really hurt if the market goes against you, but it's something to build on if the market goes up. Now, where it's come back to is a very interesting, again, technical point. This was the prior low, and it's playing around here. So this was the breakout point here, and it's now come back to this level, and we're seeing a short-term reaction right now. So before I would throw in the towel with even this short-term trade, this is the support level that I'd want to hold. So whilst it's above this 1844 point, I would be just holding a short-term position. But if it closes into anywhere down here into next week, then I would be inclined to bail out of that and then to regroup and look for another opportunity. So for the moment, it's a wait, and it's still it's still valid that it could be putting in another low so that we redraw this trend line at a kind of more 45-degree angle, which is better for long-term stability anyway. You don't want to see things moving too fast because they then come back too fast as well. And it can just be that it's happening on some short-term announcement when you really want long-term stability. So there's a few things that we could still point to that it's trying to build its base and work off this low. But technically, yeah, this could be phase one, phase two correction, then we move into phase three as the market goes up. But we've got to see that evidence. And I guess we'll know by next Thursday whether this support is held and if it's in this sort of zone and looking good, or whether we're playing in this area and having to be a bit more cautious, a bit more patient until it recovers again. So that's why it's kind of still neutral at this point. But if I from that buy before, I'm not convinced to get out because I'd still be holding it. I don't feel like I need to get out.
Yeah. I'm watching this one curiously. OMI is one of my favorite projects for the bear market accumulation. I really like the project behind it. So we were talking about Bumper earlier and how Bumper ran out of runway and essentially has announced the closure of their business, which is a failed investment. And if you're playing in the risky space, even if you're anywhere in crypto, sometimes some of the projects you invest in are going to fail. And then dissecting why they failed is important. Now, one of the reasons I like OMI, and there's this other company I like called Affinity, and the founder, Manu, is joining us, or one of the founders is joining us tomorrow for an AMA. So come join us and listen to Manu as he shares what's going on with Affinity and other things. Is I do like crypto businesses that have revenue coming in. Now, had Bumper been able to generate good revenues coming in, they probably would have extended their runway tremendously, and they could have survived and caught traction. And one of the concerns with crypto is most crypto businesses are not profitable sometimes into year 8, year 10, year 12. And so it's hard for them to get enough traction to survive long enough through a 5-year bear market. A lot of your businesses will fail. One of the things I like about OMI is they have the VV app, and the VV app, even during the bear market, has done quite well in bringing in revenues. So we're seeing like OMI is actually one of the biggest gainers during the previous bull market. going from its lows, going 3,000x up. So it saw some tremendous gains and now has corrected massively to the downside. Like I was sharing before, sometimes things swing too far the upside and then too far the downside. And I'm loving this price analysis. What I'm hoping for is I have a good amount of OMI. I would love to have much, much more. So I'm hoping OMI runs a little bit later in the cycle than some of my other things, so I can position even more funds into OMI. Though I have a substantive bag, I would like to have even more OMI. So we'll see how it does play out. Like looking at a chart that shows more specifically where prices are at now. And CoinGecko does the best job at an overview. I mean, more specifically, we had this pump. This was the recent Kraken announcement, took it up to here. And then it's kind of pulled back. And where's it going to go from here? Boy, I would love to see it go down here while some of the other things I have take off, because I would love to buy more in there. What will it actually do? I don't know. Don't have a magic crystal ball. I just hope that it gets cheaper rather than expensive. So either I want OMI to absolutely take off and go incredibly high so I can take profits out of OMI and roll that into something else that hasn't rolled, or I'd like to go cheaper. What I don't want is it to go halfway up or up a little bit and get more expensive. So it's not expensive enough for me to sell it, but it's not cheap enough for me to buy more. So hopefully it goes to one extreme or the other. That either goes down, gets cheaper, or stays the same, because it is sufficiently cheap for me to really, really like where the price is at. Or it goes way, 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 way up from here so I can take profits and roll that into something that hasn't popped yet. So for me at this price, it is a buy. I do like it at this price, and I really liked it down at this price, but it's still a really cheap buy now. Yeah, gets a buy from me. Now, on to Wes's question. He asks a very good question, which is, well, first he asked it here, and it just wasn't good to address it till later. Thoughts on Randy leveraging credit card debt to buy more Devi? I don't endorse anybody ever leveraging credit card debt to buy crypto. And the reason is you have to use money that you can't afford to lose. And the minute you go into territory that you're using money you can't afford to lose, you get way too emotional about things. Logic flies out the window, and you'll often make irrational, emotional decisions. And so what I've seen is most everyone who's gone that route has gone poorly for them, because they're now not able to take rational opinions because they're using money that they can't afford to lose. That's why it's really critical you stay in territory of investing money that you can afford to lose, not because you want to, but because it keeps you acting calm and methodical as much as possible. Now, when people are new in crypto, even using money they can't afford to lose, they're often not calm and rational. But it's even harder when you're using money you can't afford to lose. It's like 10 times harder. So I do not endorse that at all. All right, let's jump at Sui, and then I can look at this question about would I buy Devi or Definity. Maybe I'll address that question more once Paul is off, because we never talk about Definity price while Paul is on the show, because he works for Definity. We don't want to create a thing where he's talking about his own bags and the company that he works for and the price of the token of the company that he works for. So let's take a look at Sui.
By the way, I completely back up what you're saying about credit card debt. It's for any, I mean, people can, you may hear stories where people do it and get away with it, but it is the worst sort of debt in terms of cost that you can find. I mean, it's ridiculously expensive, and it puts you emotionally in a very weak position if the market goes against you. So I would say, it's one of it's something I would avoid if you want to sleep at night. And there will always be opportunities, and if you're doing it, you're trying to build wealth too quickly, and it's better to have a long-term plan to build it slowly. But also, just because one person is doing it doesn't mean you should. And if it works for that person for whatever reason in their circumstances, for example, they may have, it's like, why are they doing it? If they've got money locked in somewhere, and for them it makes sense for a short term to do it, and they've done the math behind it, then that's their call. But if you don't have any money and you're borrowing it to put in the market, then all you're doing is weakening your position even more, and you're likely to make much worse decisions. So, you know, I think a clearer head with real money is more likely to succeed. But there will be exceptions. So there you go. So with regard to SUI, it does one say we're trying to catch the low here, aren't we? Because the market broadly has been correcting like everything else. And whilst you were speaking, I was trying to find some Fibonacci retracement points that might be interesting to indicate that the market has gone far enough. Structure here is, it's actually quite difficult to call, because we've got a major low here, of course, then we've got a major high here. This low is higher than this low here. Is this confirmed? Well, you might have said that here, and the market's gone even lower. So something is building here. There's definitely some buying interest, and it's happened at a low where it's broken this low, which is normally where you would sell. So having broken this important support, you go short. The market's gone down. It seems to have hit a bottom here. It's done that twice. If we zoom in, you can see 1, 2, and now it's starting to move up. It's looking quite interesting that it might actually have a bit of a rally. Now, how much it builds on that, I don't know, but risk against reward, again, it goes back to the Cardano trade. This isn't enough for me to get excited. It's just like a rebound reaction at a certain level. So I might have to kind of bail out really quickly. But at 162 with a stop below 124, that's not bad risk reward. I've seen worse. So I could be persuaded to jump in here and see if the market builds on that. Again, in a similar situation with Cardano, there is a lot of resistance for it to overcome on the way up. At $1.89 and around this area here as well at $2, I can see that being a problem. So, you know, am I going to buy it at 160 with a stop at below 120 with exactly the same 1-to-1 risk reward? So I'm risking what I'm getting back, and I could be wrong. And I'm going slightly against the grain here, because this trend is still down. So that's why it's a difficult short-term call. But I think there's enough just to tip it into the buy. And as you can probably tell from what I'm saying here, it's not a big position that I'd be looking to certainly not leverage. It would just be an exploratory small position, again, that I could add to as the market potentially goes up. But I'd be quite willing to bail out very quickly, especially if it breaks below this 130, because that's my floor now, and I don't want to see it going any lower than that. A push from a long-term perspective, this 112 area, if it was, let's say I bought it here, bailed out here, and it kept going down, that might be another area where I think a small buy, exploratory buy, might come in. But then I'd start to think, well, I'm fighting this downward trend, and I don't want to do that. I'd rather find something that's actually moving up and giving it a bit of room to move higher, and I'll try and jump on board, which is more the style that I like to look for rather than picking lows. So occasionally I will try to pick support points, but I'd much rather the market's already gone through a basing period, even if that means that I'm missing out on buying the exact low or close to the low. I'm more driven by the overall direction, and if that direction is up, that's when I'm looking to buy. So if you asked me last week, and this is the way the chart looked, you know, I would have said definitely I wouldn't be buying it, because the trend was down, even though that ended up being good support and possibly a good short-term buy. Now it's done that. Now it's gone sideways and shown that this is support. That's why I could possibly justify a short-term buy here. But I can't get excited until it does the next phase, which is it's shown support, it's consolidated, and then it's moved up aggressively to show that it's starting an impulsive new trend. And that's that piece of the jigsaw that I want to see into next week. So perhaps we can again put this one on the list for next time and see whether it's moving up or whether it's broken the stop.
Yeah, and you said a small buy. I like this one. Now I'm not in blue chips. Yeah, really, I do have an XRP position. I have some Cardano, but generally I'm not in blue chips. I haven't been loading up on blue chips. If I were in blue chips, Sui would be one of my positions. And I liked it at this price. I liked it better at these prices, but I think these prices are probably gone. Now, perhaps you get really lucky and it falls more from here, but it looks like it might be ready to turn around. And Boo says Sui will overtake Solana. I think there's a chance at that, which is why, I wouldn't, even if I were buying blue chips, I don't know that I would be buying much Solana, if any, but Sui, I would definitely be loading up on. Now, these high market blue chips are less risky than a lot of the stuff I invest, but there's still risk. They still can fail. They generally have a better trajectory and they're less likely to fail, but they still can absolutely fail. At $1.60, what I like about Sui is all that research that Meta funded and did on doing their own blockchain. Well, that all got rolled into Sui, which billions of dollars of investment, I think, rolled into setting up what I think is going to be a very effective blockchain for the future. This market cap is $6 billion, and I think it's got a good chance to survive long term. And more projects are building on it, so I like that. It's also a lot cheaper than Solana, so its market cap right now is at $6 billion. Solana's market cap is at $76 billion. So even if Sui would have to do a 12x just to be at the market cap where Solana is at. So it's got a lot of potential for growth, and we're not even in the major bull run, where I think Solana's market cap will go higher than this in the altcoin run, and that Sui has a chance to at least catch up where Solana's at, if not higher than where Solana's at right now. So I like this one. Looking at its vesting, its fully diluted value is 16 billion, so it's still got some token vesting going on. But you can see the token vesting has slowed down a lot. So there's not really big unlocks ahead. There are small unlocks, looks like every month. And it's just slowly unlocking more of that market cap over the next 4 years. So that's fine. That works out. I'm okay with that. So now, with that said, I'm hugely invested in Devi, and Devi is a competitor to Sui and Solana technically, and its market cap is abysmally small. If it just gets to where Sui's market cap is now, then it'll have done some really, really big gains, and that's what I'm looking for. Technically, Devi could outdo all chains due to the promises they made. I wonder if it's all true. It hasn't performed well at all yet. Devi is still very, very low on awareness. Most people are unaware of Devi versus, say, something like Sui, which has way more awareness. Well, will Devi catch it? The team surely hopes so, but of course they always hope so. We'll see how it actually performs. But its market cap's been trading about 40 million versus Sui's 6 billion. So if it does, it'd be 150x if it just got to where Sui's market cap is now. So that's some significant price growth. Should it get there? We'll see if it does. That's my hope, is it gets to at least where Sui is now, if not a lot above that. And that's just my bet. All right. Paul, thank you so much for spending your time with us. Everyone, remember to catch us next Thursday. That'll be our last one for the year. So Thursday next week, not Wednesday, but Thursday.
Thank you. Thanks for the picks. Thanks for the comments. And see you next week.
Thanks so much, Paul. All right. So if I could only buy one right now, would you buy more Devy or Definity? I have been picking Devy. Well, I like both. Now, Devy, we're waiting on whether they're going to deliver on their roadmap of announcing their big exchange partner, supposedly one of the biggest exchanges in the world. And that announcement is supposed to be made. Now, one of the challenges Devy has right now is just really low awareness. And if that announcement is done well and it's a really big exchange, that could really help on the awareness, which could then see some good price growth. So will that happen this quarter? I think so. The team seems to still believe it will be. Before they were waiting on regulatory approval in another jurisdiction before they would announce it. I don't know where it is for that regulatory approval. Have they decided not to wait for it? I have asked Austin from Devy to come do an AMA, and he said he wasn't doing any interviews outside with the Devy team until after their big announcement is made. So I hope that means that big announcement is coming soon, and he's just holding off till that announcement is made. But some of this is just like a bet. So I just added to my Definity position. Now though I have a lot of Definity, I have even more Devy. So it makes sense for my portfolio. What makes sense for yours might be very different. My Devy size is way, way, way bigger than my Definity size. So it seemed to make sense for me. I like both. Devy has a stronger chance to pump in the short term, is my guess, but Manu from Definity is joining us tomorrow. And there is potentially a big announcement that can be made tomorrow. Now, I asked Manu to come on and explain it, so hopefully it's ready to be announced, because it's not an avenue us in the crypto space usually deal with. So it takes some explanation as to what it is that was just done. It's really a big deal that Definity's doing, but it's a big deal for institutions and banks. They understand this terminology, whereas I haven't worked 30 years in the banking industry and, banking level finance. So it's not instantly clear by the words of the announcement what it is that they're doing and why that's a big deal. So join us tomorrow for that announcement. Is cool. That sounds sus that that Devy's not joining to do any AMA. So after that big announcement made, was not my preferred answer. My preferred answer would be like, sure, I'd love to join you. I just can't talk about the exchange partner. Can I understand where they're coming from on that? Probably, right? So I found most companies, I'm having a hard time getting them on the channel to do interviews. Of course, right now is the preferred time I'd like to have them on for interviews, because I want to, like, most everything's cheap. And that's when we like to hear from the team to get a feel for what's going on. And it's also when they're least likely to try to come on to do an interview, because the price is generally down on their projects. They're working hard, but they're probably feeling like it's not seeing results. So what I'm finding is the hardest to get them on right now, even though I think the timing is best to have them on, because we want to know what projects are massively undervalued. And the best information is interviews with the teams. So do join us tomorrow. Should be a good interview. So I hope you got it with the money supply growth and what a big deal that is. And likely that's coming. A lot of people have resigned themselves to, oh my gosh, this cycle is over, and shoot, I should have sold the top. I don't think that was the top. I think 2026 is going to be a huge year for crypto and for these altcoins that most altcoins haven't seen a run. There's been a few that have had their narratives pump within the bigger altcoin bear market, but that altcoin bull market has not come yet. I think it's still coming. Thanks for joining us. You all have been with me for a while. You know what this wrap is all about. Really? Look, I mean, it's sad to say that 95% of people do crypto investing wrong. But what I love about that is 5% do it right. And what I notice about those 5%, they all do the same things. So if you can learn to think like the 5% do, which is what this channel is dedicated to, helping people watching these videos think like the 5% do, because you don't have to have whatever background they have. If you can learn to trade like they trade and think about things like they think, you're going to start having their results. And so this fun wrap is just to reinforce those principles of what the 5% do. And it's just a fun way of doing it. Also, if you haven't joined the Discord, join the Patreon link below. We'll give you access to the Discord. Get in the Discord because we have deeper discussions there. We have private interviews there that you don't have access to seeing from just the general YouTube channel. Deeper information, discussions. Also, part of the reason I created the Discord, because like what I realized in 2018, 2019, and 2020 is, sure, I was doing lots of research, but there were some really big things that pumped in 2021 that I was unaware of. And had I been more aware of them, I would have bought them. So what I hoped with the Discord was that it would create a group of like-minded people that have more than just my understanding, that could then make logical cases why they believed in certain projects versus others, so that together less good projects would be missed, because you would have multiple people that are thinking like the 5% do, that are bringing more good projects to the table to share with others. And that has panned out really, really well. Sale, who you've seen in the chat here, brought to everyone's attention XRP, as well as many of these ISO projects that so far performed well, but I think they have further upside. And he brought those to us a year and a half ago when they were dirt cheap. Now they're more expensive now, unfortunately. They're not as cheap as they were. I do think they have further upside, but critical to making good money is buying low. And that was a perfect example of making the case when all these coins were severely price punished. And I think they've realized a little bit of those gains with further upside to be made. And so it's about creating that. Now, do you realize that many of the rainmakers have been now with us for 4 years, learned to be really good at this, and that Discord is going to still be the right place to be in the coming bear market, as well as the right place to be in this bull market, because a lot of people are going to miss selling when it's right to be selling. There are times probably coming up in this current, like in this coming year, where you will wake up and you will find that your position, some of your positions have gone up 4x overnight from what they were, and maybe they are already in gains, or they might be up 75% on the day, and then the next day maybe up another 75% from there, and it'll be time to harvest. Now, people will think you're crazy selling at that point. That'll happen, but it will be a good time to be taking profits. And in there, you'll get lots of discussion on taking profits. So hopefully you don't miss harvesting when the gains are ripe for the harvest. Thanks so much. Enjoy this wrap. We'll see you all soon.
To the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit, buy before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't lead with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes it time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, studying to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking at this road, cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, say the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.